Good morning, students. So today we'll discuss about the database concept again. So this is the second video from the chapter database concept. So in today's video, I'll discuss about the components of database and the database structure. Okay. In the last video, that is in the first video, I discussed about what is data, what is information, what is database, what is DBMS, database management system, what are the advantages and disadvantages of the database. Okay, there you learn about what is data redundancy. Okay, the advantage and disadvantage of that. So if you have not watched that video, okay, please go back and watch that video first, and then after that only you watch this video. Otherwise you will not understand this video lessons. Okay, so let's start this video. First we have is the components of database. So here data is the most important components of database management system, which is piece of information stored in tables. Okay, so data is stored in tabular format, that is in rows and columns format. Okay, data is the most important since the word itself is called as database. Okay, so user needs to enter the data, to manipulate the data, to update the data. Okay, which is all done, okay, with the help of the database and the database management system. Okay, so the core thing is the data, since user needs to access the data and to make changes to the data, which is able to do it with the help of this DBMS. So to manipulate and manage the data, there are some components of the DBMS. The first one is the user. Now the user can be any person that uses the database, that can have access to the database, that access the database. The user can be the database administrator, software developer, okay, or end users as in such like non-programmers. Okay, so anyone who has is able to access the database, those are the users. Okay, next we have is the database administrator. So the database administrator, in short DBA, performs all the activities of maintaining database system. DBA creates, establishes policies, does troubleshooting, performs all related activities to keep the data secure. So the database administrator is sort of like the backbone, okay, of the database. He manages everything. So he is responsible, the database administrator, for ensuring the integrity okay, of the data, then to restrict unauthorized access of the data. Okay, so to make sure that their security is provided. Okay, then the database administrator is responsible to ensure that backup and recovery facilities are also maintained, is for ensuring data sharing and redundancy of the data. Okay, so all of these things is managed by the database administrator. Now in the third one we have is the application program. So application program is the software through which the user can interact with the database. So it is the graphical user interface, the front end part, through which end users, okay, can also access the data through the DBMS. So without the application program, naive users will find it very difficult to access the data that is stored in the database. Okay, that means without this application program, only the database administrator will be able to handle, to manipulate, to manage the data. Okay, so application program is also very much important, okay, because it is the graphical user interface part. So here is a pictorial diagram, okay, make you understand much more better. Okay, so we have the end user, okay, the naive users. So those it could be non-programmers, it could be programmers. So the end users sends a query. Okay, it means like it asks a question, okay, sends a question to the database to extract the data. So through the application program, okay, and then from there the application program directs the queries to the DBMS. The DBMS processes that and then sends it to the database. from the database. If the data is stored there, the database sends it back to the DPMS, and from the DPMS to the application program, and finally back to the end user. Now, in the case of the database administrator, the database administrator can have access to the do it through the application program. He can also manipulate the DPMS and also manage the database. Okay, so the database administrator has access to every, because he created the database software. Okay, so think of it as like suppose like in the case of an end user, okay, who is trying to access the ATM machine. Now, any user, okay, who has a bank account will be able to access the ATM machine. He just needs to swipe that card, okay, and then the ATM software that is visible, okay, which asks for the PIN code, okay, to do the transaction and all as such. So that is considered as the application program. So with that application program, the user can manipulate the user's data, like withdrawing cash, okay, changing the PIN code, asking for mini statement. Okay, so when all those things are being done, when all these queries are being processed through the ATM software, okay, so whatever query is being processed, the ATM through the ATM, okay, it is sending the queries back to the DBMS. So the DBMS software will handle all those queries and then again sends a response back to the database server, from which the data will be returned back. So if you're asking for a balance inquiry, okay, that process goes back, and then the DBMS inquires from the database server and then sends the balance back to the end user. Okay, so that is how the data is being managed through all these channels. Okay, now next we have is how database is organized. Now data is organized in the standard way so that database can retrieve and manipulate the data. Okay, so some keywords that are associated with database are the first one is the database file. Now this is the main file that encompasses the entire database. So a database is made up of many tables, related tables. Okay, so all of these tables are contained inside that database file. So to access the tables, to access the data, okay, that is stored in tables, okay, the channel is uh, through the database file. Okay, so think of the database file as a directory folder, okay, and in that directory folder all the related files are stored there. Okay, so without opening that folder, okay, you will not be able to access the file. Okay, so that is the database file. Okay, next we have is a table. Now a table contains related data uh, of a single entity. That entity could be like a student, okay, so a student or a customer, an employee, like that, okay, or an item. So in case of a student, so that table will contain details about many students. So students, so related information about different students, right, like their roll number, their name, their marks, like that. So data are stored in rows and column format in a table. So a table is a two-dimensional representation of the data. Okay, now records. So a row of data in a table contains information of one entity. Okay, a table can have many rows, also called records. So one row of a data contains information about one particular, say, student. Okay, say the student roll number, the student name. So all the student data, one particular student data will be in one row. So a row is also called as a record. Okay, so a table can have many rows of data, or if a table has 4 rows, that means there is 4 records for that table. Okay, next is fields. Now a table can also contain many fields. So a table can contain minimum one field, that is one column. Okay, so a field is also called as a column. So a table can have as many columns as it wants, but all the columns should be related to that table, and all the column names should be unique. Okay, so the columns are also called as attributes. So every row is identified by its column. So if suppose the column name is roll number, okay, so roll number is called as fields, and roll number is also called as attributes. Okay, so roll number contains the data of all the students roll number. Okay, so like 101, 102, 103, those are the datas. So the field is actually the column name, that is the roll number. Okay, so here they are also called as attributes. So in C++, these fields or attributes, they are also called as, referred to as by the name variables. Okay, so here they are called as fields or attributes. Next is your data type. So data types are the properties of each field. It identifies the type of data a column will store. So if the fields are called as variables, okay, we know that every variable is associated or identified by its data type. So using the data type only, the data associated with that column name will be identified. Okay, so here I have a table from the textbook. Okay, so you can refer from the textbook also. So if you can see here the roll number, the name, okay, like that, those column names they are called as field names. So they are also called as attributes, and they are called as they are called as in C++, they are called as fields, right? So you can see the next line, you have the data type. Okay, so of course in a table it is not written like this, the data type is not mentioned. Okay, but this is just a pictorial diagram to show the students what data type is. So there are different data types here. They are like number. Okay, number represents all the different types of digits from 0 to 9. Okay, they can be of decimal point values, like that. So their numbers, under numbers comes integer, float, like that. Okay, character. So same like you have in C++, here also there is a character data type. Okay, and then you have date data type, like that. So next you have is the row. So one row of data contains one student information. So in that case, a row is called as a record. So here you have 6 rows. So in that means you have 6 records. Okay, so I hope that by this particular table you have understood the different keywords that are associated with the database. Okay, so if you see the character data, so it contains alphabets, it contains uppercase alphabets, lowercase alphabets, it contains special characters. Okay, it contains numbers also. So that comprise the character data values. Okay, and if you see the date data type, okay, it also contains numbers and special characters, like that, right? But however, it is not associated with the data type date. It is associated with the data type character, but it has its own data type called as date. Okay, so why? Okay, it's because like it is in the format of ddmmyy, which I'll explain later on. Okay, but just remember that in a database, a date has its own data type called as date. Okay, so for that you don't need to fix the size of it. So which all these things I'll explain later. Okay, so that will be all for today, and in the next class I'll discuss more about the database.